hello species names A through Z. There is a hyper additional name, and or this is more probable and practical because there are proofs that it was in semi ancient times too. It came about that a transnational organized crime group realized it was going to get caught, and it realized before it did, it realized it would have to force, trick, hurt, and persuade other people to respond to a syntax nature to things improperly, and then defend that, like they do with the syntax regarding torture and uses of words like extremism and radical, and or with relative readings of statutes regarding the defenses of differentiating. No, in other words, that gives the benefit of the doubt to people based on their job or whatever like that, their title. They left out exceptions in exception nature, as our founders communicated rather than said, for us to demonstrate. There was a breaching method entrenched where no one had free speech, and there was a means to measure if anyone was going to try to have free speech through everyone's own people by keeping them sustained roles hurting each other, like pretending that you guys can't discern that we have black pupils, whites of eyes. It means enough to understand that and to discern since we were kids. There was a breaching method, a fact cheating nature breaching method, faked integrity forced upon the colonists and the Native Americans before that and through that, before our founders were even born. This breaching method was sustained against Native Americans. And in other words, and already had been sustained against the countries who were involved against the Native Americans. A through Z have a virus control, like it's like that almost. It's like A through there's a hyper additional name. And it's like I'm not a lawyer. The lawyers, all sides of criminal and civil cases, lawyers and the court's names have been sticking sequence shifts, fake things into databases. Former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, he's increasingly involved with people all along New Britain Avenues in Hartford and Rocky Hill. For example, with Wethersfield police chiefs retired, and a whole bunch of people that from other areas have been planting evidence on my street involved with the World Trade Center attack and the court next to it that day, the Ninth Circuit Court. They also planted evidences in that case, and names on all sides of that case are involved with the police and forging and switching names. There was a guy who said he was a dean Keys with Tunxus Community College, has roles with people with a whole bunch of different countries, and she said that she had roles with a Kuwaiti general. And with the dean, there's a Dean Judd and his family members involved with Hartford courts and the written Superior Court and Connecticut's District Court before the World Trade Center. They have roles within natures of foreign and domestic intelligence at West Hartford and the Britain locations, which are involved in intercities with names who are intra campuses, predicate acts with facts. It's people involved with Fred Grouzet from New York City and others tied to him. I don't know their names, but they know mine, who were influenced to plant evidences on my street. Has something to do with their roles with names all along roads and routes. Like Walker Hill Road has a Parker English. I believe it was the guy Parker English. And a whole bunch of other ways anyways. Parker English is one of the guys. In other words, intern departments involved with people from Wethersfield on Church Street in Old Wethersfield. Have roles with wire crimes at Wethersfield Police and a Wethersfield Pizza is involved with the same names on the corrections offices and the judicial branch offices, involved with predicate acts with facts between campuses, putting kids with fake communications with other kids, fake ties and fake natures of ties completely, and then changing them. And the difference of that is also used, which is also relative to where and how we have black pupils, whites of eyes, and they have KKK, black themed, Latino themed police forging and switching names, wire crime acts and methods where the police forms fabricate evidences. There are all kinds of sick natures involved with the judges and prosecutors and their family members associated with the Rick Faglione, involved with foreign and domestic medical families, involved with child offenders, leaders of kids, involved with sexual and medical. There's a Leahy family that faked conversations with me through the mail, forging names of foreign doctors where they have hostage of our names, roles with people. I never had a class with a Rick Faglione in grammar school. And people that went to a school I went for 1 year for kindergarten in Wethersfield before I went to that grammar school from first to sixth grade, I never had a class with him there. I only know him making confessions tied to people involved with wire crimes and falsified police reports. And the police pretended through the news they had conversations with me as a kid, because the kids they did have conversations with, they faked they forced them to change fake things, and they hid the foreign names involved with them and those kids, including overt criminal enterprises. Increasingly, the people involved with the Wethersfield police brought up the name Cololo. Bob Chase confessed that it's a Phil Cololo. There's a Phil Cololo involved with the whiting forensics, also with a Joshua Julian, with the Facebook page of a principal upskirt nature in prison for it, since before he was one of the ones who forced it. He's one of the ones confessed by a Mark Violet too, involved with a Hartford hospital with foreign and domestic military, also with Justa Kovinskis. I never had a class with Justa Kovinskis. He makes up stuff about himself and others with people involved with the military from Central Connecticut State University in Britain that has been planting evidences on campuses, intercities, and intra-cities, and at campuses I went to from other classrooms. And now these are also people with the news planting evidences on, off, and next to the campuses, and to force the principal child abuser. A whole bunch of people in the Britain Superior Court, Hartford's court, and Connecticut's district court. They have good people recorded how they're maintained, used remotely as evil, and collusions with FBI, CIA, state police, families, interstates. There are interstates, all kinds of state police associated and inter-services and military involved with people with the name Cololo and DeMoro, who confessed. Also, there is people with the name Scalora also years ago, as the ones by the Wethersfield police. And there's a Inspector Mike. They won't give his full name. The fire department has rules on off the businesses of the people, and some of the people still work at schools, I believe. So they're trying to hurt people at their jobs to persuade them to stay collusions. Because Hartford Hospital too has a whole bunch of people involved with planting evidences with this Cololo name with the retired police chiefs and their extended family members and intimate ties involved with identity theft, frauds, slanders, wire crime acts and methods where they fabricate fake evidences and influence the news to use lies where they don't have the right to lie. That's why we're going to examine their rules with Central Connecticut State University with some black KKK themed, Confederate flag themed, unmarked police forms and families pretending to know people. Also, people next to with businesses and homes next to where the Wethersfield police station is now. I don't even know their name. They know my name. All these people running high life progressions. All natures of, they have the public access television and the news involved with all these different countries in the news. They have roles with scams like, they say call it for domestic violence. They have it a phrase. They have the victims advocates involved with all kinds of natures of organized crime on up the state judicial branch offices and corrections offices, and with the campuses, and with their roles timed on off campuses using their kids for fake motivations because there are foreign names involved and it needs it to appear real. That's why they can't get on paper. Judge Napolitano asked them many times to get on paper. These are people on off the Ninth Circuit Court right in the World Trade Center context, right the day of the attack, involved with the court from inside the court, post-dated legal papers, names on all sides of that court, lawyers associated, people, their family members, the same thing. Interstates too. If same ones in New Britain courts, Connecticut cases, the Connecticut District Court rolls with predicate acts, a whole bunch of people next to Fox Connecticut News involved in intercampuses, people that were planting on the streets next to me too. These are evidences crimes where the right to lie is used when they don't have the right to lie. James Comey is also involved with a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendants at West Hartford locations. They affected confessions to me. They have roles with Hartford courts, family members, and intimate ties, all sides of criminal and civil cases and depositions before the World Trade Center attack. All kinds of medical corruption and delusions are associated with the people associated with the courts and their family members and the police forms at the same time with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, not legitimately with their roles with all those nations in the news together. On off campuses, suits and ties, counters, exceptions as collusions. They keep pushing their kids involved with it too. A whole bunch of people tied to this violation. I don't even know if they have their kids involved. In other words, because of the foreign countries. And a whole bunch of people at Hartford Hospital involved with lawyer scams, wire crime, mail crimes. Let's get them on paper, one name and sequence. These are people at the same time with the news and the interbranch preventing writing since I was a kid. Because once they get on writing, actually, they already recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed collusions with what we're going to observe at each campus everyone went to. There are criminally foreign influence uses of it. We're going to examine black pupils' whites of eyes, how this was left out with the breaching method that employed it to mean other before our founders were even born, even though nature is going to keep demonstrating it. This breaching method used and uses identities of law and science, pretend they're going to reason or honesty, and they're going to leave out the breaching method. They're going to pretend they can't discern it. Not one science spoke honestly for New York City, and many people wanted that spoken. People that aren't even from New York City. See, they're all kinds of natures of organized crime are involved with the syntax and the names at Quinnipiac University. For example, a polling location that has rules also with the World Trade Center attack and with identity theft, fraud, slanders, where they film fake things on campuses, film 24/7 by putting fake audio and video transcripts. And then sometimes they make acting with all sides and lie about what came first, like as they did at Quinnipiac University. People that don't even know their name. They planted evidences with judges and prosecutors, and this Rick Cianfaglione with foreign and domestic medical families involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids, and fake ties to me with people on my street since I was a kid. Increasingly involved with Hartford Police, Rocky Hill Police Departments, Newington Police Departments, Wethersfield Police Departments, the difference of their roles with foreign and domestic military. What are you doing with the Afghan leaders and kids on up the Wethersfield town offices? And with this Whiting forensics. Whiting forensics recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They have federal evidences, crimes, roles, and way worse, organized crime roles with a former upskirt nature principal force. They have more medical, sexual, and evidences, crimes through time. They have crimes timed with the news too. Also with the Joshua Julian, who's recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with lies in the past that the news had. Also with the people that were pretending that and fake motives with various natures of federal criminals before they were caught. When I was at the same campus, and they have the daughter of the principal at school, and more teacher that was involved with predicate acts there with the mayors too. Increasingly, people with mayors are involved with Saudis that they forced collusions because they also have remote uses of the differences of sides, where they defend our side as a fake side. Like when Judge Napolitano and his sources, some ways our only defense from what they call the mainstream media and their takes on things. But this is also collusion because, in other words, everyone brings up war crimes, but they don't bring up how the formal syntax behind war crimes is still collusion, is tactically delusion is raw, criminally foreign influence. In other words, black pupils, Other got us into World War. Other got us into the Civil War. Than was is pretended. And that's used to measure and maintain identities of science's names that are going to self-value other things, others, ourselves, communicated for what nature communicates and for what our founders communicated. Because our founders communicated for us not to leave out that preaching method about how there was an identity theft, fraud, slander method against every single person. Man, it was a torture, extortion, slavery method /S with everyone roles. Only remembered. Our republic for which we stand, America, is a criminal re-engineering of itself. So human names A through Z are being and haven't been consciously measured and maintained, used as systems and through systems tactical ulterior from the one that's true always. Any and everything that we have, we could have had cheaper and better quality. We didn't, because all natures of debate contain quality aspects in nature of collusion /S with use of difference /S. So nature shows us what to do, but we don't have mandated law followed. And all exceptions, the exception nature show other. They want to put 10 years in prison. I heard somewhere for making a threat against a school. They're putting fake. When you catch the school doing things bad, because it's way worse. They pretend it's opinion. Clearer than day. People who use words like security, their criminally born influence, tactically delusions raw. All kinds of legal scams originally and still. All sides of criminal and civil cases, lawyers. There's a Trantolo and Bob Walcott barely had words with them. They had obligations not to hide, let alone to force additional natures of organized crime roles with the news and with a proven principal child defender that Trantolo is rolls with. You got to get these people on paper and one name and sequence with the judges and prosecutors associated with them. Watch, I'm going to delineate the delusions from their criminally foreign influence natures and souls. That's why A through Z are killing each other, because there's maintenance to them with the excuses with that, like the World Trade Center attack. You guys attached me with WFSB, has collusions before the World Trade Center attack as the Connecticut's Channel 3 News. They have recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed collusions with names next to them who have been on off the campuses I went to since I was a kid, like Central Connecticut State University and a campus I went to when I was a kid. There was a Hilton Cataly. They have roles with they have roles where they interact with the campuses and they speak about things like jobs and titles, criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, rot, and worse, used to measure and maintain. Other communicated that about the value of jobs and the economies that our founders communicated for us to communicate about that. Many ways that was forced and is forced by a breaching method more than anything else. That's why there are obligations upon the leaders A through Z and upon their counters to each other. In other words, as their own countries or the other ones, to fight and not leave this out. We see that when the fight gets people killing each other, that's how they maintain. It's one of the main things. You guys want to think how sick it was? It had witch trials. At the same time, it had black pupil, whites of eyes, mean other. Everyone's roles with it or you're sensed. Same time, laws speak about other than the suburbs designed before cars were or our founders were even born, the basic design of them. Speak about other outside the internationally monitored conversations, that person was sensed and heard. The international monitored conversations weren't roles with that, they were sensed and heard. This thing was hyper sophistication. Replacing that identity of hyper sophistication that keeps demonstrating it. The one that is not our species body. It is not the other species bodies. It is hyper additionally greater than and more finite than that. but while as us anyway. One of the ways we could discern it. It's the same difference / hyper difference that we could discern by discerning how we have black pupils, whites of eyes, the same color eyes, and how we have exceptions, the exception nature as itself. It shows us the difference / hyper difference, how it is making more of itself. We'll come to this. There are means and needs to counter as fact treatment nature that which this breaching method made and measured and maintains effectively, fluent through self-value rolls with it at A through Z. This is why we could examine this. The beginning of the Old Testament and the beginning of the Quran, for example. People are supposed to be reading books with science. Rather than doing that or allowing that to be done, they only allow heard definite defenses of those books or attacks on those books out of sequence, leaving out the parts that both the Old Testament and the Quran come with a part right up front that says only right here is what matters. The Old Testament says only defend right here, where the names of the people of the sciences will come together in the part before it. And that's before the part at the beginning of the Old Testament with the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Adam and Eve and the generation of them in those names. So you guys can't value sequence true. You have self-valued sequence shifts, collusions with the World Trade Center attack, with your lies and delusions regarding what happened. Even the ones of you who know more about what happened than me. I was there right before the attack. I wasn't in the attack. I wouldn't want that attack on anyone, let alone that attack to stay one of those things involved with keeping someone from showing how we have black people's whites of eyes. We could discern fake law is all that speaks. Many ways for New York City. How it gets away with it is by keeping countries as names with individuals forced to entertain locations, areas, and states. You guys are playing the value nature systems, the economics logic dishonestly, using truths for lies, using exceptions, valuing exceptions, being set up fake on a mass scale. People are bringing things before courts and or the courts themselves and or the police forms. The difference of that. The names of the judicial branch officers, corrections officers, increasingly people involved directly and indirectly with predicate acts and facts on my street as one's there. And where they put evidences on all sides of my house and all sides of houses of other people. For this is a method that kept you guys so fake that you can't even. In other words, there's a predicate acts with facts delivery system method worse than war crimes that is discernible here. And I'm not the only one who could discern it. Y'all also a whole bunch of people tied to the FBI and various police departments and courts. They jump in on comments. And the difference between the people that work there and run and their campuses that train them how to be a Facebook, etc. Those Tumblr has roles right before the president was shot at. Increasingly with Connecticut, with police forms and guns roles, different police forms, including Secret Service, with sick natures out of the Central Connecticut State University, with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, involved with a Dean Judd and his family members, with foreign and domestic military at West Hartford locations, and other spots between that and CCSU. In other words, and these are the people that won't get on paper. They have Jigelle King and her family members and people tied to them involved, too. And with all kinds of legal corruption. And way worse. Every formal spot. The forgiveness is so to get them on paper. In other words, not leave out the foreign names and the hyper foreign. A whole bunch of people, a whole bunch of judges, family, extended family members, a whole bunch, and Bob with the same house, has something to do with their roles all along Route 3 and Route 175. With timed, a whole bunch of people with the executive branch and the judicial branch used remotely and grouped. And these are also people timed collusions with mayors and people associated with them and other natures of politicians and their roles with town lines, etc. So in other words, WFSB is involved with stealing my identity and then lying about their motivations for it. They have roles with the Facebook page of New Britain Superior Court, of Hartford Courts, and of Wethersfield Police. Wethersfield Police have roles with a Joshua Schumacher and his mother, and a whole bunch of people tied to them. I don't know his mother. I walked by her one time. They try to take a picture near you, and they plant evidences into cities. Has something to do with their roles with fire departments, with the foreign and domestic, and with the religious spots. They have roles with the religious nutbags, where they pretend prejudice by offensively roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders. Then they pretend they're lying about their motivations. They also have federal crimes with the police the police forms and the courts names and the foreign bodies associated next to Fox Connecticut News, involved with wire crimes where I can't get them on paper. And they want me to use email because they already use digital email crimes, faked and changed digital evidences as collusions of all kinds of natures with crime scenes and murders that were brought up intercities, and the untimely death at Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut, with the names on my street, like a Rob Rodriguez from other areas who planted evidence on my street. That's who brought up the principal child abusers campus and the name Scalora. Also, Wethersfield Police were confessed the name Scalora, but they're forging and switching names. I don't even know if that's a Wethersfield Police. He forced himself through my door too, and I didn't even respond. These are the people that are also roles with the news that pretend I spoke with them as a kid. They painted themselves in corners with foreign and domestic families. A Gill family confessed there's a Sanchez, and the news said there was a shooting with the name Sanchez with task force. There's a New England States drugs task force, has roles with a Cololo family and a Smith family, planting evidences, and roles with a Rob Rodriguez with some untimely deaths and associated with his confessions about the uses of my neighbors in the streets, and his roles with people tied to them. They had roles with home break-ins in my area. They also have roles with timed uses of confessions tied to untimely deaths with the same house years before that. These are people increasingly with all natures of investigators. There's also, I have extended family members I don't know at all, and ones that I barely know. They attach me to fake ties to them on their religious spots, all names on all sides of the religious spot involved with it too. Even that they hide behind. Increasingly too, has something to do with their roles along the roads and routes, and with the interbranch forging and switching names. So WFSB and Fox Connecticut News and WTNH have been planting evidences with their sources in Wethersfield and with judges and prosecutors' family members. And they have roles with the untimely deaths, with people involved increasingly with overt criminal enterprises and private ones at the same time, at corners of streets with foreign and domestic family members. A whole bunch of different countries are involved with a Ray Colo and a Joe DeMoro and their family members, and ones with the name Jerry Kerr as a father and a son, and a Michael Kerr, also involved with the officer Jerry Miller, and fire departments, intercities, involved with the names planting evidence on my street, and foreign and domestic military. They recorded, confess, demonstrate, confirm their influence to pretend other, but first to confess, demonstrate, confirm rolls with a hot dog place next to Covington Street, which is also involved with the mother of Tanya Gill and a Kyle Gill. I don't know Tanya's name. I believe her name is Tanya Cologne. And these are foreign and domestic intelligence families where they have their languages and their differences in play by a breaching method as well, because they're involved with judges and prosecutors on Covington Street in New Britain with people from Wethersfield through time since I was a kid, before I lived on Covington Street. And through that, increasingly they have people forging and switching names. They have lawyers and leasing agents also involved with a pager I had. There was a pager I had. There was a Normandy Heights apartment building and the apartment building next to it, and the ones that switched, the leasing agents that switched, also involved with the foreign and domestic military families, involved with the campuses putting fake. I never had a class with Lucinda. I don't know her last name. Associated with the Justin Klavinskis. I believe she's married to him. He's one of the ones involved with Mark Violet and a whole bunch of people next to Hartford Hospital, involved off the hospital, involved with people with wire crimes on my street and people tied to them. Has something to do with the roles all on the conjunctions to Hartford Hospital brought up the name Casper. Increasingly, people with New Britain Superior Court and Hartford Hospital combat and has roles with people next to the state capitol involved with the Chet Casper planting evidences. In other words, and these are people who are cowards with guns. Why don't we just fight any way you want? In other words, and get on paper though too. But get the church, get the Hartford Hospital that brought you up faking names. There's Judge Killian, who has roles with some digital crimes, with digital and sexual and medical offenders of kids. We're going to get him on paper too, and his family members are involved with it, with their roles with communications, locations, and news too, and the difference between that. We're going to get them on paper, one name and sequence. These are also people who are seating juries, originally still criminally foreign influence. Also, the difference between how we have a jury here compared to other countries, they are tactically delusions raw too. We're going to examine while they're using criminally foreign influence, fact sheet nature, quality aspects in nature, the identities of the law, and the people they counter as collusions with each other. Increasingly, people on off the World Trade Center are involved with predicate acts on my street, and tied to this Heather Hansen and Joe DeMauro involved with the home break-ins and the wire crimes with the police for themselves. Dear God, make sure the Wethersfield police get onto paper and don't pretend it's personal too, because there's a whole bunch of different departments, and there's co-defendants, a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, involved, and more child offenders, leaders of the kids. Rick Ciampaglione recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. There was also a whole bunch of educators tied to a Timothy O'Brien. I never had a class with him at all, ever. Timothy O'Brien, involved with planting evidences and predicate acts with mayors and people tied to this Ray Collo, and Tim O'Brien, and Rick Ciampaglione, with judges and prosecutors putting fake things in databases with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, as collusion/S. Let's get them on paper, one name and sequence. Now, let's go. And these are uses remotely of Judge Napolitano's Facebook page. I don't know if he knows about it to an extent. Well, in other words, you guys, we have no defense. Look how the suburbs were set up. So we could put a means for leaders to be able to meet to be able to afford to admit this stuff, and for people to afford to admit it at the same time, because the difference is used remotely too. You have people pretending that they're making examples of how they want free speech. It's recorded. They can't afford free speech. They have discerned. There are all kinds of wire crime acts and methods, including with the people that answer the phone, and they'll just change what's recorded. So we're going to examine this, because they're forcing this. They also have privacy narratives. They have all sides. These are rules with all sides in criminal and civil cases. The difference of that, no, everyone was criminal together per an additional name involved with everyone's narrative too, using remotely quality aspects of fact-checking nature, using fact-checking nature as criminal insidiousness nature. I'm not a lawyer, thank God, and we'll get the lawyers better than free. We have a predicate acts with facts delivery system method, worse than war crimes that we could discern. It's true always, and who denies it? Black pupils, especially ones in New York City. Here, let's get the WFSB onto paper. Please, Judge Adams or Mayor Adams, former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and other agencies associated with this, foreign and domestic medical families, overt criminal enterprises, private ones not legitimately unmarked police forms associated with a Fred Gruzet. Let's get him on paper too, because he's one with planting evidences on my street and sequence shifts and identity thefts and frauds with foreign and domestic people on all sides of campuses too, planting evidences. Fear God, to hide and plot. These are also Sandy Hook names involved with the ones on my street, planting evidences intercities next to the campuses too. I'll show you how and why that is manifest. Timed uses of it. Increasingly, there's a Peruta family that kids from Weathersfield will court a confess, demonstrate, confirmed. And then again, increasingly a Peruta family and others Russians, I don't know the names of, it's nothing against Russians. These are Russians against Russians too. These are people putting fake things in databases, like psychiatry roles with courts and prisons. And these are people on the state judicial branch offices and state corrections offices, recorded involved with corners of streets. Like at the corner, like with a Peruta family associated with a quarter near on corners on Griswold Street, along Route Maple Street. Also, like where there's two Mazzucato bakeries involved with a judge, with a former police chief Cintron, and people with the name Dylan, and people with the name Mayano, involved with sequence shifts, federal evidences, crimes, identity theft, fraud, slanders. Whole bunch of people with the courts and the FBI and foreign and domestic military, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw. Get them on paper, one name in sequence, and let's get their names rolled with the schools with them. There's a Michael Emmett, and there are people with the name Riley further involved with medical and sexual offenders of kids, and with the intelligence families next to the school too. Get off my name. Fear God for all exceptions too. We're want to show you they're planting fake exceptions of people knowing each other, where they use truths for lies and they pretend people are liars where they're telling the truth. They're forcing quality of fact-checking nature as criminal insidious nature while haven't been used remotely. Even our most sophisticated identities of law. That's why we have sick people. You know what's going to happen when they take that guy. They catch the guy now. They thank God they didn't kill the guy. They usually kill the guy where they need to question the most. You know, right when they have the means to. In other words, but the people that question them, those people are already associated with all kinds of natures of organized crime and delusions. They can't afford to end uses remotely of their differences, like of the value of the FBI. We have black people as whites have eyes, for example. That's one reason, one formal identity of the law, not one of them, it should be respected. In other words, and they're using the differences of the parties and these political candidates as weapons, where others ourselves, is forced blame for things our founders and nature itself shows us to blame on the breaching method, because that's one of the things true always that slavery was about. It was about a fact-checking nature breaching method, a human facts, a predicate acts with facts method, roles, a criminal insidiousness with fact-checking nature, roles. So many ways, people like me, we're not even lawyers. We can speak about the law better than Judge Napolitano. There were many judges with not as much morality as Judge Napolitano. You know, A through Z, they have failed. We're not going to compare. We're going to be led by the hyper invisible, but still discernible. Like how, in fact, it is true always. Me and others, we're grouped as humanity. We agree. One thing that slavery was about, true always, was the human fact cheating nature breaching method. It was a method forcing, tricking, hurting, persuading, and measuring, maintaining roles as systems A through Z, tactical ulterior from its own. This now, all leaders are above locations, areas, and states that spoke about economy. They entertain natures of debate, quality aspects of debate. What are they doing with the conjunctions to Route 175 with Parker English and his roles with Central Connecticut State University Intercities? Because there's a Faenza family, or not Faenza. I think it's Faenza. No, that's another one associated with body dummy spots too. But they're a Pazina, I believe. I don't know what the name is. They know my name. They live on Valley Crest in Wethersfield, associated with the DeMoro family. One of the DeMoro families involved with the FBI and the courts. Involved also with Sandy Hook families. There's a Mr. Neville, and there are people with the name Neville all along Route 3, intercities involved with predicate acts. And I drove by an apartment he said he lived in to our class one time. Never had a personal conversation with him. There was a broken window on the bottom of it. That Whiting Forensics also had confessions to me, also in the form of statements regarding their roles with those locations. Like there was an Omni place, and there was a guy who fought Paul Spadafora named Pito Cardona, I believe. I never fought him. I fought Paul Spadafora before he returned professional. I fought him in Ohio. I never saw in the gym Pito Cardona. I remember I wanted to fight him at the time. But in other words, that location, the Omni Gym, and next to it, there's a Joe DeMoro who's involved with the former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendants, John LeConte, Thaddeus Grabowski, John, and I forgot the other guy's name. But the other guy was a neighbor of Eric Jensen in Newington, who's also involved with the people with two different Colo and DeMoro, and people with the name Pandolf, involved with recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed little kids from my campuses, had roles with intelligence families associated with their families, and they went to different campuses. And they're planting evidences also with names next to campuses, identity theft, fraud, slanders, little tricks also with mayors. Increasingly, people tied to a former mayor, Gold, have been planting evidences, fake motivations for it, including on Facebook with the people involved with the sexual and medical offenders of kids. Harvard Hospital has roles with the FBI and foreign and domestic military, and people into religious spots who are fabricating conversations and preventing me from getting help. I asked them to get on paper one name in sequence. These are people personally and professionally involved with a whole bunch of judges tied to the same house, Cololo, and involved with their neighbors too, like a Smith family, involved planting evidences with them with their educators too. I don't even know what schools they went to. David Smith and Jamie Smith. It's also their roles with Afghan leaders and kids in fire departments, and the Russians and people from Koreans involved with this. And the spots next to where the Wethersfield police station is now, since before it was there. People involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, planting evidences, collusions with all sides of criminal and civil cases, and timed use /S of that later as timed use of intercities locations. Various murders are involved, like the murder of Greg Kyler, even if it was made up, and that's also with the people roles with untimely deaths, remote uses of the sense and sensibilities of sports stars and celebrities, using them to get into people's businesses dishonestly, into people's business dishonestly. All kinds of natures of organized crime associated with people who answer phones and with people who frame issues, like having a hotline for people of domestic violence. They make people describe instances where they know first they wait until they're going to measure and maintain, they're going to leave out what's actually recorded. Because the agencies record faked and changed transcripts. They have people say things and then say the opposite. There's a demonstrably, in other words, there's a girl with the name Bobby, and there's a guy with the name Bobby. They switched that, but they implied that they were used to do that because they have judges and prosecutors that other people recorded, confessed, demonstrate before, during, and after that involved planting evidences on Covington Street with people who enter campuses, also with the names next to the campuses. The Gill family also has intelligence family members, extended family members that work at Central Connecticut State University with security and policing of it. These are also people with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, in ways that he doesn't even know. Because they are, in other words, but he does to an extent. They've been planting evidences at corners of buildings, trying to make fake exceptions as their roles with names on all sides of criminal and civil cases leading up to it, the World Trade Center attack in it, as one's intercities and interstates who are also international. The people from Weathersfield have shared cousins. There's a Scalora family and people from East Hartford locations associated with a Robert Chevrolet. A whole bunch of people tied to a Robert Chevrolet in spots next to the state capitol have roles increasingly with Kalala family and people tied to them, and conversations with them, planting evidences with the intelligence community, foreign and domestic, identity theft, fraud, slanders, fake ties, fake natures, ties to people roles, and with their educators. So they have roles in the past with proven first leaders of the kids abusers, and the abused were involved with them with other collusions with other natures of organized crime, criminally foreign influence uses of, reality. You guys have replaced what kids like me and many others were capable of discerning just because we have black people's whites of eyes. Black people. In other words, you guys left out the breaching method. You guys have other things, others ourselves, blamed for where we have things that we could observe that are true. One of the things that the human fact human nature breaching method is one of the things that is true always that slavery was. But you have other things that are blamed for it. I'll demonstrate. No, all truths with that are used for lies to hide behind. If you force everyone to roles with that against themselves too, then you introduce money into it, and you start making everyone blame that and themselves, leaving out the breaching method that's playing that and using that difference too. We have the same color eyes and different color eyes at the same time. We have nature teaching us about difference. Don't leave out how there's a breaching method teaching other and everyone's roles with it. Keep it right there. Don't let them use war crimes, leaving out how the people with the definitions of war crimes, there are treatments of exceptions in exception nature that are tactical ulterior. In other words, it sounds like it's righteous and for a human species names, but look at the suits and ties, counters, and exceptions. Because when they speak to defend that, it's worthless. See, there are certain type of victim / hyper victim predator, hyper predator as fact human nature. That's only allowed to be because it manifests they were child abused at campuses A through Z. No longer hypernative pure. Nature itself shows us to appreciate how it is hypernative as ourselves, but only to an extent, only for a time. But the value of that is only increasing. But as its system and its identity of relativity to positive and negative, which is one way we know juxtaposed with our matter, one way we know coming to and from it, and when we know one way is observably won't mix with it. And all those three ways keep increasingly valued distinctly to itself, the identity of the hypersimultaneous. And that increases the value of the other ones. In other words, we can discern how time shows us. Time's complete body. We are shown there's an extent of the past we know is true always. There is an extent that is active right now and or grouped. Which is the second part we know distinct of time's complete body. And there's an extent of time like the value of the seasons that we know about it now. It is already here, even though it has not yet come. These three parts of time we know are true always. We know there is a part of time before this, but we don't know about it. But we know that. That's a fourth part of time. And there's a fifth part of time beyond that part of the time, the future we do know about as value anyway. In other words, there's that fifth part we do not know about. And so it is grouped distinctly 5 ways from how 3 ways. Appreciation of this properly shows us the difference of that. And contemplation of it is also increasingly valuable to and as itself, which the identity of the hypersimultaneous has a concentrated identity of relationship to Earth, where it has the same exact identity of relationship to all parts of space/existence, except for how this concentrated value is relative, and or it is forced from here as its negative identity of relationship to itself. No longer that especially concentrated value. It is forced from here, lease of IDs, forced space nature transfer. I did not read that being the definition of it. But revelations come where and how there are things that are true always, and other things, others ourselves, start getting blamed. In other words, are blamed in place of where we should be. In other words, we should be paying attention to things that are true always, not denying the slight sequence, not valuing truths, no matter of what nature or significance, being used by others, because we could sense that too. But see, all sense has stayed sick, or you would have discerned, you would have sensed and discerned the relativity of a hyper additional name from those A through Z, playing these games. So all kinds of narratives where people use each other's names in conversations, on phone conversations, this is where this breaching method uses those differences too. The same breaching method that employed, how we have the same color eyes, different color eyes, to communicate other than nature communicates with it. Nature leads our answers and shows us how to make answers means out of nowhere. We have needs for leaders' individual voices are above locations, areas, and states, including our own. Criminally foreign influence, fact, treatment, nature, quality, aspects of nature, certain type of victim/hyper victim only known to entertain ourselves as through economies, criminally foreign influence. Our founders left us to demonstrate. The Constitution was abridged. It was a torture, extortion, slavery method. Rolls with it. The difference between the breaching methods rolls with it, everyone's rolls with it, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, or how the countries were all shared now grouped still, all groupings of humanity, tactical ulterior, from how nature communicates, using individual species, body of individuals, all group differences, plural, and demonstration of the hyperdifference, the singular hyperdifference, the one that reveals how the other species didn't invent why and how they have two eyes, just like humanity didn't invent why and how we have two eyes. All exceptions, exception nature, come with demonstrations of the same thing. There was a hyper simultaneous. Being individuals, being a simultaneous hyper additionally from and as the species body of volume. It is also being an individual sequence nature relative to the species body being a simultaneous nature. And both values are completed, made and kept hyper simultaneous, but positive or negative to its system. There's such a thing as criminal insidiousness nature of positive. Not a lawyer. Lawyers couldn't appreciate this properly, black pupils. We have to force that with using mandated law forced properly with love and care. And we could do it here, like Sings. The British Superior Court has rules with a Facebook page of campuses with parents and kids colluding with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and including the interbranch kids. And their differences were recorded involved. And the news at the same time, though, with overt criminal enterprise, private ones. You have to follow mandated law, though. There's a Michael Emmett who is further involved with whiting forensics since I was a kid, with names near me, along with various natures of organized crime, with state police, families, interstates, involved with the people with the name, with tied to this Ray Colo. And let's go. Get him on. In other words, a Phil Colo, PHIL, is one of the ones involved with a Bob Chase, with whiting forensics, who they've been preventing me from getting a police report, and they're changing narratives with it. One officer had a fake conversation with me, then pretend he's involved with the police report. One of the ones with the name Mendez. And then they're also involved with people with the name Yagman through time, planting evidences and Yagman brought up the name Dingleberry, I believe, or Dewberry. I believe it was a Dr. Dewberry, who's one of the names next to the Wethersfield Police Department where they are now. Who's one of the names also involved with the names that live near me, named Smith, involved with the Wethersfield Police Station where they are now and used to be, and fire departments, involved planting evidences on all sides of my house since I was a kid, and the roles with their campuses. I don't even know what campuses they went to. There were homeschool kids who also run in and hide live progressions by taking part and being part of arrays where they're, in other words, they force people for mental evaluation. A whole bunch of people involved with that as judges and prosecutors. They have personal and professional roles with predicate acts with names on my street that don't even live here anymore. They have time collusions with them every year. They're wasting time preventing writing so they could hide what they did with writing, and while they were being used remotely, all sides of criminal and civil cases. The difference between those people who really do more and more bad things, or the courts, because they're doing way worse. They're involved with predicate acts with facts, framing little kids, etc., adults. Even when they actually do something wrong, they're changing it, faking it, and hiding their roles with other natures of organized crime and motivations that are also recorded, like psychiatry. There are people from our countries that are criminally foreign influence psychiatry who have badges, tactically delusions raw. They can't defend their logic and or know their natures and not afford self-value roles with criminally foreign influence readings of statutes regarding what should be the response and regarding why it's that way. With the like Facebook was offensively has people instigating fights. So it's not that they were trying to defend their platform and keep it a certain nice nature. They have collusions with sexual offenders, with judges and prosecutors, including female judges, black and white female judges involved with some black KKK Latino themed police forms and family members, and foreign and domestic intelligence, identity theft, fraud, slander, little fake punks, increasingly involved with people directly and indirectly involved with kids of leaders of kids. You should fear God to hide plot. Please fix the news, fake news. And Fox News, please don't pretend you guys, in other words, you guys have all kinds of all kinds of social racketeering, also with people tied to Jamie Carone is also one of the ones involved with wire crimes and false and people with the intelligence community. Like there are people with the name Lombardo involved at Hartford Hospital and with DMV and Department of Transportation involved with sexual and medical offenders, including with judges and prosecutors, and putting fake things in databases and changing them. And the difference of that is used criminally too. All kinds of scams at Hartford Hospital, even the lawyers involved with, and the same names involved, and with the same house /S with the retired police chiefs and intimate ties to them, like the Mazzucato Bakery. And these are people that don't even know me. I only know this because they're refusing to get on paper, and they keep affecting confessions and demonstrations roles with it. In other words, and they keep speaking about doing stories anyway. You guys have obligations by the law. Get the campus on paper, one name and sequence. Let's go. I want a response to the principal child defender's campus for his confessions and for the faked and changed what I recorded them involved with, and to the parents too. And I want those difference of them. There's ones with the name O'Neill, who is also involved with their roles with teaching with West Hartford campuses, further involved with people with drugs and medicines crimes, with overt criminal enterprises and private ones next to the campuses, and with the foreign and domestic military and the FBI director Luskin involved with Eric Burgess in those religious spots, and people associated with Mark Violet and Mike Violet, and people associated with them next to the state capitol with foreign and domestic military, and other people associated with that planting evidence on my street through time. I believe that might be a kid of his, one of the ones with intercities with the Central Connecticut State University and UConn, has roles with foreign and domestic military, also involved with medical corruption, tactically delusions raw, and organized crime groups. UConn recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed they have roles with various natures of organized crime groups next to Hartford Hospital too, with Tomorrow's Market, Ilo's Kitchen, and people with the name Mayano that live next to Hartford Hospital. Involved planting evidences also with names next to schools, intercities. You fear God. Get them off the news too. Get to fix the fake news and fake conversations with me. WFSB pretended fake conversations with me. These are people involved with predicate acts with other news and communications, locations, names though, and their family members. There are a whole bunch of journalists associated with Central Connecticut State University and narratives and natures along Franklin Avenue, involved also with criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. How you guys can pretend not to realize when you bring up economies what our founders really communicate. In other words, there's a preaching method involved with this conversation. It is inseparable from it. Don't fear God to pretend not to.